welcome back to my channel. Today we are making the Glenwillow Saddlebag by Hold It Right There Patterns, or is it Hold It Right There Designs? I don't know, but anyway, so I have used a turn lock in this because I now have them to sell, so I have them to use. Inside we've got a big front slip pocket here, and then on the back of that we've got two smaller slip pockets, and I've also put a zipper pocket in the back here. Now the pattern comes with options to put more pockets in more places, so you can put one along the front here, you can put a zipper or slip pocket on the back. If you really wanted to, you could put a zipper pocket in your flap here. But anyway, options galore. I made the pattern slightly different. My front piece here is not attached to my other front exterior piece here. I decided to top stitch it differently, but the bag still works out the same, so it's fine, but you don't have to do it this way. It's just how I did it. I also show you how to top stitch on a cylinder arm machine because I thought that would be fun. And I show you how I did my final iron of the bag. So if you'd like to see some or all of that, stay tuned for the video.
Alrighty, so let's get started. I'm all about today, I am going to do this in a completely different order because I'm going to do it how I would normally sew. So basically I want to eliminate as many pieces as possible so I've got as few on my desk as possible. So I'm going to start with my flap. So I'm going to put right sides together. And I chose not to do the piping, just, I don't really know why, I just didn't feel like it, is pretty much the reason. So I'm making sure I back stitch at the start. Now, trick to curves, put your hand on it roughly in the middle and pivot your hand as it turns around, and that helps to guide it around the curve well. Alright, and then we're going to get pinking shears. So I finally got a new pair. These are the Fiskars ones. They're supposed to be spring-loaded, but so far, I don't know. They don't... Oh no, there we go. So the idea is that this won't hurt my hand as much because they're spring-loaded, and I've got to say, this is the first time I'm ever using them. I'm pretty impressed. Usually zigzag scissors hurt. But they are a bit heavy, although I suppose all zigzag scissors are, or pinking shears. Alright, so now I'm going to flip this round. And then push it out along the seams with my finger. You could also do that with your flute cleaner, or whatever you use in place of your flute cleaner. So then I'm just going to kind of roll that edge, and then I'm going to top stitch it so it looks pretty, because I love a good top stitch. I kind of actually top stitch almost everything I can. When you're doing a top stitch, always extend your stitches to make them longer. It looks so much nicer if you do. If you ever have 5 minutes, go into like a horse bridle shop and have a look at their stitches. They look pretty because they're so big. If they did the same stitching and it was small, it would not look half as good as it does. And they're professionals, so I'm taking their advice. Alright, so I've top stitched all of that, and I'm going to back stitch at the end just to lock it in. And then I'm going to set this aside and move on to some more pieces. So I do have a lot going on here. So I'm going to take my front piece. I'm going to be putting a turn lock, which obviously you saw at the start of the video. So I'm not putting the zipper pocket here. I'm just going to put one. I haven't decided if I want to put it on the inside or the back yet. So I'm just going to line this up. Now, because this is an inner curve, a concave curve and not a convex curve, I am going to put a couple of clips on it because the ones that go in tend to be naughty and slip a lot more than the ones that go out. So as much as I don't normally clip things, I definitely will clip that. And I always put the lighter fabric of the two face down. Today I am using a non-woven medium interfacing because my interfacing has still not arrived. Although I thought it was going to be yesterday, so it has to be today. So So it's only coming an hour and a half down the road. I just can't go pick it up because of lockdown. And because now it's with the courier. So I'm going to stitch there. And then do I want to stitch across there? I think I do. I think I want to stitch across here too, now that I think about it. So I'm going to come over and do this end. Because it's shorter. If that makes sense. Basically follow your, what's it called? What's this called? Foam. There we go. Oh. Okay. Then we're going to come into the curve with our zigzag scissors again. Now if you don't have your zigzag scissors, you can just cut the seam closer. You can also put little cuts into it as well. So then when we turn this, I think I want to cut this off as well. This might not be how the bag's made now that I think about it. I didn't check. I've cut all the pieces according to the pattern. But I might be sewing them a little bit differently. But you know what? It's still going to be cool. I'll make it work. Alright, so I'm going to flick out that corner. And then we're going to pull down the lining. And I'm going to top stitch this as well, because otherwise that's going to roll too much and it's going to annoy me. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to, normally I would just tack this all the way around the bottom, but I'm not going to do that because I still have to insert the twist lock. And I want to top stitch around here first. Now, my corner does not look pointy and glorious, and that will annoy me. So I'm going to take my stiletto and I'm just going to flick it in and then kind of pull the corner out so that it's more pointy, so that when we're doing our stitching, we can stop at the edge and do like a tight curve and it will look nice. So again, I'm just rolling this down with my fingers to make sure it's right on that curve. You can also iron it. Whatever you really need to get the job done, I guess. So again, with this corner, it's just a little bit too curvy and not quite pointy enough. So I've just pulled out that edge, and it does make the biggest difference. I probably pulled out like 2 millimeters, but it makes it sharp and crisp, and I'm all about that. So now I'm just going to top stitch that bit. So I'm going to crank it up to my top stitching length, which for me is, I've gone all the way up to 4 lately. I like 4. 3.5 also works though. So I've back stitched, and I'm stitching 1/8 of an inch from the edge. If you're new to top stitching though, do a full 1/4 inch. It'll be easier to manage until you master that, and then you can slowly make it smaller. Needle down and pivot on that corner, and then back stitch. Okay, so there's that done. That looks lovely. Like I said, I'm just putting all the pieces together and then we'll come back. So I'm going to grab my strap. Now the strap is done in 2 pieces, and I made the strap how the pattern says and not how I would normally do it. So it's got interfacing. You fold over an edge. Which edge did I fold? I don't know. And then, so we're going to join these pieces together. So I'm going to open this out flat and sew the seam, and I'm going back to a joining stitch length, and my joining stitch length is 2.5. We're going to back stitch at both ends to lock it in. And then I did actually iron and fold it according to the pattern. For the most part, I do try and follow the patterns. Just sometimes I get super inspired and go off course. Mainly with my zipper pockets. I always make my zipper pockets the same way. If you're in my Facebook group, you've noticed it's like a thing. So I'm going to stop with my needle down in that corner. And then I'm going to stitch down the side like this. Now I did iron this, but it was, you know, a few days ago. So the ironing has kind of started to come disheveled. So I've just got to make sure that I'm tucking that in as I go. And you always want to stop with your needle down before you go and readjust. Needle down. So nearly there. And I am going to go back down the other side as well. And I'm just folding in those raw edges because they're annoying me. I'd like to hide them. I also didn't check my bobbin today. I wasn't paying it. I think it's a full one. I wasn't paying enough attention. Alright, so down the other side now. The second side is always quicker, in my opinion. Which is why you always do the open join side first. So there we go. Scrap is done, so I can pop that aside. Now let's go on to our lining. So this is going to be a slip pocket. So I've cut two and I'm going to put them right sides together and up the right way, obviously. And I'm going to top stitch. Well, not top stitch. Stitch along the top. We're not top stitching yet. We will top stitch this though. I'm going to back stitch, trim it off. Like that. And then we're going to fold it so it's wrong sides together. So if you notice just then, I put a crease as I flattened it. So now when I pick it up, the edge sits right in the center. So you should definitely try and do that, I guess. It creates a crease so it sits nicer, so you spend less time sitting there rolling it where it needs to be. Okay. Trim off your tails. Grab one of your lining pieces and stitch it on. And I think I stitched it upside down. Oh no, I'm okay. Alright, so I'm going to just lay it on top and I'm going to baste it, which is stitching within the seam allowance all the way around the edge. So I usually do about 1/4 or 1/8 of an inch. You just want to make sure it's going to be less than your seam allowance. And then I'm going to split this pocket in two because that one slip pocket is too big and in the bag it's going to gape like this. So I am going to find the center, which we're going to need later anyway. So I'm going to find the center and just make a little clip right there. And then I can sew a line down the center. Now you don't have to make your pockets symmetrical. You can move the line over one way or the other. Or if you like lots of little pockets, you could do 2 lines and break it into thirds. This is just what I'm doing. I'm not sure what the pattern did. It might have done the 3. I'm doing the 2. Okay, so that's that pocket piece done. So now we're going to do our zipper pocket. So I'm going to fold this in half, and I'm going to do it the same way I always do. So I'm going to grab a pen and a ruler, and I am going to measure 1/2 inch down from the top, and then 3/4 inch in, and then 3/8 inch down, and that's what size my zipper is going to be. Now you can do it smaller and then have a bigger pocket. That's not a problem. So if you don't want a huge zip, you can make them smaller. And then I'm going to want, that's the wrong size zipper tape. That one's a 3 and we need a 5. Preferably a small piece. Where's all my zippers? Another 3. You know what? We can go black with, oh no, see, I don't think black with silver is going to go nicely. Maybe I could go a cream. Cream would look nice on the inside of the bag. You don't have to do red, just because I'm using red stitching. Let's do a cream zipper. So then I'm going to measure the zipper, the full length of this. And what this does is this ensures that I'm going to sew it within the seam allowance. And that way you won't have any raw edges. If you don't want to do it that way, there are several other ways to attach a zip. So if you have that initial facing piece and then you do it, your zipper only needs to be slightly bigger than the hole. The other option is that you can put zipper tabs on the end. They do that in the Juniper by Blue Color. So there's different ways you can do it. I just like this way. I'm used to it, so I can do it quickly. So we're going to take where the fold is, the part we didn't draw on goes to the top, and then I'm just going to line up my zipper pocket where I want it. So I don't want it too far up because you've got to remember there's still a seam allowance, but I don't want it too far down either because then that's just, it looks weird. So you've got to kind of find a happy middle, line it up. And then I'm still on my joining stitch length. I like to start in the corner. Some people like to start in the center, whatever makes you happy. So we're going to do a couple of stitches and back stitch. Oops, not that one. That was one too many stitches. Sometimes if you catch it, you can unstitch a stitch. It's made a hole, but it'll go away. It's fine. Stitch along there. Needle down in the corner and then pivot. Needle down and pivot again. And then back stitch. Then we're going to trim our tails. I don't know why I'm saying ow. I'm the only one here. Okay, so I roll this over the edge of my table so that I can pinch it. That's the easiest way that I do it. And then I'm just going to make a really small cut. Now, I never make that cut big for the main reason of if you are cutting crooked, you don't want to snip your stitches. And you also want to try and cut it as close to in the center as possible. I know some people draw this on. I don't. I personally can roughly estimate where the center is, and it doesn't matter if it's slightly off center, so unless you're not stitching on one side completely, you want to be roughly in the middle, and that'll work out fine. So then I'm stopping about 1/2 inch from the end, and I'm triangling out my corners. And I'm making sure I stitch all the way up to my stitching, but I don't want to trim them. If you do accidentally trim them, just kind of stitch that whole cornerish section again, and it will work itself out. So I'm going to go to the iron, but first I'm going to show you with my hands what I'm going to do. So I'm going to fold this up, and I'm going to iron along here to make that crease. Then I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to iron this piece down like this, and then I will push all of it through the pocket hole, zipper pocket hole, whatever you want to call it. And I use my thumbs like this to push out the sides. Then I will come and I will iron it all down flat because it should be sitting right on your seam if you've done it in the order I just said. So I'm going to have to hit pause and go and do that because my iron's not on, nor is it near me. And then we'll come back and install the zipper. All right, so I'm trying to put my zipper on. It's been a bit stubborn. If you have that problem, if it's on equally and it's just not moving, just flick it back and forth and hold it like this. So put your finger up against the back of the zipper and then pull both sides down so the zipper can't slip off the top, and then you just wiggle until it goes. But just don't use too much force that you go all the way off the end, because that would suck. That's how I do zips. They get there eventually. Sometimes they're just, I don't know, a little bit stubborn. So I always put my zipper to the left. I know I say that a lot in videos, but you may not watch all of them. So I'm going to say it in all of them anyway. And then I'm just going to line it up so the edge of the zip is in line with the edge of the fabric, because we cut it the same size, so it should all fit. And then you can start wherever you like. I like to start in the corner, but I've noticed that a lot of people like to start like along the top. So I'm going to do it that way for you, just because, I don't know, let's switch it up a little. So I'm going to start right here, but I'm not going to backstitch because you'll notice it. Needle down, pivot, over the zip. If you're using a metal zipper, do not sew over your teeth. Hand crank it so you're in between them or around them. Or cut the teeth out in that section. We're going to stop with our needle down. Now that I'm at my zipper pull, I'm just going to lift up my foot, zip it open. By the way, knee lifts are glorious things. So my domestic actually has a knee lift. You can screw it in and take it on and off, and it is super helpful. Now, I want to trim these tails off now before I actually get to them, because if I don't, then they're going to get all tangled up, especially underneath where you can't see. And so now, that is in now the same holes where I started, so I'm going to go 2 stitches forward and then 2 stitches back. 1, 2, 1, 2. Like that, and then trim it off. So it's not super noticeable where the start and stop is. I don't think you can even see it on camera. I can tell you it's right there. But another smart thing that I could have possibly done is started on some red, because then it would make it even less noticeable. All right, let's shut half of our pocket. So I'm going to stitch down this side. I'm going to back stitch, and then I'm just going to seal that side shut. Now you can use any seam allowance you like. The less seam allowance you use, the bigger your pocket is. So, you know, there's that. We're going to stitch and back stitch. I also checked up on my pattern for this, and I did the front wrong, but I think it's still going to work out, so I'm not worried. Okay, so I'm going to leave that pocket open. That'll be like one of the last seams we do. It won't be the last because we attach the straps last, but that will be the last part of the bag that we do. The twistlet comes with 3 bits. You've got the whole, or the female, the male, and you get 1 gasket because this has got mini screws. So to use these, you will need a mini screwdriver, which I actually managed to remember to grab. But we're not putting this bit in till later, because that bit goes in the flap. So the first thing I want to do is straighten up the prongs like that. And I kind of want to put it up high, and I'm going to have to do different measurements to the pattern because the pattern's got a clip lock, not a twist lock. So there's that. And then you want to just check which holes these go in. So they usually are never even, I have found, because this 1 gasket probably services a whole bunch of different things in their factory. So they're the holes I need to go in, but I still want to find the center. So I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm going to need this again later anyway, so may as well do it now. So I'm just going to clip where the center is, and then grab a ruler and my Chaco pen because it's black and I want to be able to see it. So I'm lining the ruler lines up along here, And I'm just going to draw a small vertical line up near the top. You probably won't be able to see it because it's on a light part, because that's, you know, the irony of all that effort. But that's okay. So now I just want to line up this evenly on each side, and I'm going about ½ inch down from that top edge. So there's one line. Then I'm going to have to use my Chaco pen for the other line because that ends up on black, like so. Now, because this piece is fabric, we are going to use our Fray Stopper glue. I also finally changed over the blade on my craft knife because they come with a pack of replacements. So I'm going to make sure that the lining is well and truly out of the way. And then I always like to put blade up, start at the bottom of the hole we want to make and cut upwards. And if you push the blade in, it creates the bigger hole, like so. So then I'm going to, this bottle's so old it leaks just automatically now. But that's all right, I'll need a new one soon. So I'm just going to put a little bit of the glue. Now don't squeeze this. It's runny like water and it will go everywhere. So I'm going to push that through the hole like this. And then we're going to put the gasket on the back. And then you want to push this down as hard as you can and then bend the prongs out so that it is as smooth and as flat as possible. Now obviously this is a little bit tricky. Like that. That one can go out further. So the idea is that it's going to sit flat. Now, if you've got a piece of tape, I know a lot of people put duct tape, but I think I'm out. Oh no, I've got some duct tape. I have a whole drawer of random tape. So, just to ensure that it doesn't lift and doesn't come out, I know a lot of people either put duct tape or sometimes they put some iron-on non-woven interfacing over that so that it stays. So I'm going to put the duct tape. I'm going to hold on to the lock and then smooth it out. All right, so that's done. So now that the turn lock part is in, I'm going to pull this down and tack it at the bottom. So I'm just going to base along that bottom edge. Not a lot, just a little bit. Just enough to kind of hold it there like that. All right, what's next? Next up are my exterior gusset pieces. So I'm doing vinyl, as you can tell, and I've put my logo here rather than directly on the bottom. And I will be using square rings. I know the pattern calls for round ones. However, this is what I've decided to do because the strap doesn't need to be removable. So I don't have to use the shoulder straps and the swivel clips and stuff because it doesn't have to be removable. So to avoid that, I'm going to use square rings and just have the handle permanently attached. So I've just folded in, so I folded it in half. And then I just folded in probably like 1/4 of an inch on each side to create the strap connectors. And I'm going to chain stitch one after the other. So I always do the open end first, and then I'm going to do the other end. Like so, and then I can take this and pop it over here and then grab one of my sides and attach it to the center and then grab another one and attach that. Now you'll see that I haven't used foam on these pieces And the main reason for that is this is a very thick red. It was from the upholstery guy that I talk about a lot. He had like a closing down sale and sold me all his vinyl, which is awesome, but I can't get it anymore. But this is much, much stiffer. And because it's not a huge bag, I don't think I need the foam. And then sometimes there's patterns where they don't say foam and then I use it because it's all dependent on the materials you're using. If I was making this out of like just fabric, I'd probably do the foam. But too much foam takes away too much of the space in the bag. That's the other flip side of that. All right, so I'm going to stitch this. I'm going to back stitch. Stitch along here. Get to the end and back stitch again. And then we're going to grab the second one and do the same thing. So I'm going to chain stitch it. We all know I love chain stitching. It is quicker and more cost effective because you use less thread. Trim the center. Trim here. Now I've got that in there. So now I'm going to fold this down. I'm going to top stitch the bottom piece. So I'm going to make sure that this faces down. But top stitching requires a bigger stitch length, so I'm going up to a 4. You could definitely use D-rings here and then just have your strap removable. If you shrunk this pattern down a little bit, it would be a really good clutch size. So in which case you could have it as a clutch or a crossbody. So there we go. That's now our side pieces. So we're going to join it together at the bottom and back to a joining stitch length. I know I make us go up and down a lot. I could do it less in the changing of the size, but there'd be a lot more random pieces that at the, like towards the end, will just all need top stitching. So we're going to stitch, we're going to back stitch, we're going to back stitch at this end as well. Trim your tails. Now, for decorative purposes, I'm going to fold this open and squish it open and then top stitch 1/8 of an inch each side of the seam. This is both decorative and functional in that it's going to hold down this seam to make a flatter join. You don't have to do this. I'm not even sure if it's in the pattern, but I'm going to do it because that now sits open and flat. I did literally not much work for that. So it will be easier when joining all of the bag together. Okay. I'm going to do the same to the gusset. We're going to join this. We're going to back stitch. Now this one I'm not going to stitch open, but you can just press it with your fingers or an iron, like so. All right. Oh, give me a second. So we're going to take our main front piece and we're going to put it onto one of our lining-y pieces. So we're going to line it up all the way around the edge. You may want to clip this because it is a curve. You don't have to. I'm going to because I want to make sure that that inner lining is also lined up. It's obviously lined up at the bottom because we've already tacked it, but mainly in these curved parts. I want to make sure that it goes all the way out, and then I'm just going to baste it on. So I'm making sure I'm within the seam allowance, and I'm just going to stitch around the edge. And I think I'm about to run out of bobbin thread because it sounds like it. When you spend so much time at your sewing machine, you can hear when things change. And I now know that that tinny sound is the bobbin running out. So that is now my front. So I'm going to pop that aside and we're going to go on to our lining. So I already joined it in a different part of the video. So I'm going to find the center, which you just fold it in half, and then where the bend is, I'm just going to make a tiny little snip. So I just take a little bit out of the lining, but it's still well within the seam allowance. So we're going to attach that. So I've picked the zipper pocket piece first. So I'm going to attach that with this clips facing the gusset piece. Like that. So I'm going to do the bottom straight edge, and then I'm going to curve it around to do the top edge to make sure that it's going to fit. And then I'm just going to ease in this curve. I'm not sure why they call it easing in, but they do. So I'm going to just make sure that the curve doesn't have any wrinkles in it for the sewing part. So what I do is I push my thumb in and then curve it around that edge, like so. Then we're going to come up and do the same to the other side. So I'm always making sure that my clips are facing the gusset, so this piece. May as well bring Scully over. I'm going to need some more. And it's always harder. I can't do it like this. I have to flip it over so that my thumbs can make the curve and push away from my body. I'm trying to do it the other way. I really struggle. So that's just something that I don't think I've mentioned before, actually. But I do love this. This is a very cute bag. All right. So now that that's all clipped, I'm going to sew it with the gusset side up, so the way my clips are facing. We're going to stitch and back stitch at the start. I'm on a 2.5 stitch length. If you're on a domestic, they quite often default to like their normal stitch length. You should probably use that for joining. And then when I get here, I just have to lift up my foot because the join in the gusset got a little bit crumpled. So I've just flattened it out again. And we're going to go around the curve. So again, I've got my hand on it, and my hand is doing, so this hand is actually what is curving it. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but I promise it's the quickest way to do curves. Whoops, missed Scully. So now I'm going to check on the inside of the bag to make sure that there's no like wrinkles or anything in the corner. And then if you're happy with that, you grab your zigzag scissors, and we're going to trim down that whole seam. Now, the reason we're doing the whole seam and not just the edges is because the less fabric that is from the stitching to the edge, the nicer this is going to fit on the inside of the bag. So that is a very real thing. So I like to trim all of the seam allowance, not just the curves. I have to admit, I do like that these are spring-loaded. This is much easier on my hand. But it will be interesting to see how long they stay sharp with all the clipping I do. So just going to trim all of that off in one big swoop. And I know a lot of people ask, why don't we just make less of a seam allowance? And the official answer is because it gives more room for mistakes. Okay. So that one's in, my zipper's open because that's important too. So then we're going to take our slip pocket piece, and we already know where the center is because I've put a thing there, but we're going to do this one a little bit differently. So I'm going to put one in the center, and then I'm just going to smooth this out so that it's flat to the start of the curve and put a clip. Then I'm going to smooth out this side, do the same thing, and then I'm going to take this clip and put it over there. So the idea is that we're going to leave this gap. And this is where we'll turn the bag through, and then we'll just sew that bit up through the zipper pocket. You can do it the other way where you pull it through the zipper pocket, but this will ultimately be quicker because it won't be so difficult to turn the bag through. So again, I'm just easing all of this into the curves, clipping it down like this. And then we'll come over to the other side, making sure that all of our clips face the gusset. And again, I'm making sure that this is pushing away from me because that's just easier for me, really. I should probably hurry this video. I reckon hubby's going to want to start hammering soon. Alright, so we're going to stitch around the curve until we get to the start of the straight bit, and then we're going to backstitch. Like that. And then I'm just going to skip the hole and come to this side, and we're going to start with a backstitch there and then go around the curve. And backstitch again. So that is now our lining done. So we're going to turn that through, lining facing out. And then we're going to go on to our outside. So we're going to do exactly the same thing again. This is my back piece. Now again, if you want to, put a zipper pocket here. Or you could put an exterior slip pocket, or, you know, whatever you want, really. That's why I love patterns. This pattern is great because it gives you a great shape, but then there's so many extra things you can do. So you can shrink it down and make it a clutch, or like a clutch crossbody convertible. I would probably shrink it to 80% to do that. You could blow it up if you wanted a bigger handbag. I'd probably go up to 110, maybe 120. You'll just have to adjust the seam allowance parts for that. Oops. Get some more clips around the curve. Now, mine is not fitting great right here, and I can tell you exactly why. I know what I did wrong. I did the wrong seam allowance when I joined this piece. So this is what happens when you don't pay attention to your seam allowances. However, because there is a curve in this bag, it is easily fixable / hideable. So I won't have any issues. It just, sometimes it looks like it's not going to fit for the other reason. And the solution to this would be to unpick everything and make more of a seam allowance. But I'm fairly confident that I can fix it without doing that. But that's what happens when you don't use the seam allowances, patterns say. And the reason I probably did the wrong one is because I didn't check them before I started. I just assumed I knew, and that was my first mistake. So we're going to stitch down. And I'm just going to work this easement throughout the whole bag. So I've actually already done some, and you can't even tell, which is awesome. So long as it's smooth where we're stitching, that's actually all that matters. Because if it's not smooth where we're stitching, then we're going to get puckering. And we don't want that. That's how your bags look messy. So all you have to do is when you're pressing it down, make sure that it's smooth under the needle section. It doesn't matter if it's like rippling. I guess rippling's the word. Rippling where the seam is. Like where this edge is, because that's not where we're stitching. So don't worry about that bit. There's the end of the bobbin. So I'm going to put my clips back on there. You just need to make sure that where you're stitching is smooth. The other two sides don't really matter. Now I'm going to leave this on while I do a bobbin, because I'm going to start telling you every video to make sure that you oil your bobbin. I have got a video on how to do it and where to put the oil. So on industrial machines, the bobbin is the only thing that can't self-oil. So you have to do it for it, and you should do it every time you do a bobbin. So I wind it until it snaps off. Different threads snap at different amounts of pressure. And then I'm just going to put in like 3 little drops. And again, I have shown that on a different video. And then you want to run your machine at full speed because it's going to take the oil that it sits in and distribute it throughout the inner workings to make sure everything works. So especially if you're a slower sewer, there's nothing wrong with that, but you need to make sure that you do this really fast to get the oil moving through your machine. And you can tell because there's a little window on the top and you'll start seeing oil kind of splutter up at it. That's to prove it's working. And I always wind my bobbins only 3/4 of the way because I find it doesn't like back stitching if I fill it. And I like back stitching, so I don't fill it. I mean, it means I have to wind more bobbins, but on the flip side, I don't have as many issues when I sew. So it's a bit of a trade-off, really. I like to sew how I like to sew. So less of a bobbin to get to sew my way is a fair trade-off for me. I could learn to sew differently so that I don't have that issue, but it's not necessarily worth it for the extra, 2 or 3 meters you get on there. All right, so I'm going to go back to the stitching and I'm going to manually put my needle down into a hole. And I've gone back probably 3 stitches and then I'm back stitching to lock that in. And then we're just going to continue sewing like we were. Pretend like we just never ran out of bobbin. But I will come back and trim off those tails in a minute. And I don't know if you can hear it on the video, but I can hear that my machine is now quieter because I've oiled the bobbin. And I do this literally every bobbin, on screen or off screen. Unless I'm winding 2 bobbins at the same time, and then I'll just do it the once, for obvious reasons. Right, so that's all my tails trimmed off. We're going to check in here, and all my edges look lovely. There's no pinching. So we're going to grab the other piece. Now the reason I'm doing this piece second is because of the turn lock. If you've done a magnetic clasp, you could probably do it in any order. There's not really a right and a wrong anyway. They both have to go on one after the other. So the only reason I do the other one the other way is because I need to make sure that I leave the gap in the not zipper side. So you want to do it on the opposite side. You don't want to leave it at the bottom here. It's harder to pull through, is what I personally have found. You may have different experiences, but I find it easier to pull the opposite side up. Oh yeah, I can hear hubby's gearing up his shed, so that's okay. We are nearly finished. Line up the top. Line up all the curve. Alright, lots of clips, always facing the gusset. Like that. And then we're going to do the other side. Now I'm actually going to do the turn lock hole very, very last, once the flap is on, because I don't know where I need to line it up. I could, in the future, if I was going to make a lot of these bags, I would work out where the turn lock needs to go on both pieces, and then I could pre-do it, but it's not a big deal to do it at the end, in my opinion. Alright, so I just need to fix this easing in this corner because I didn't do it right. See how it's just a little bit too big? It means I didn't do it right. So I'm now going to come from this corner and just slowly move the clips along until I don't have a bubble anymore. That's pretty much all I'm doing. Which is now. So I needed some more clips, but the bubble is gone. So now I can stitch this side on. Back stitch at the start, obviously. Another thing I could have thought of as well is where I've put, like, which side my logo ended up on. but it actually doesn't really matter. Unless you want it on the same side of every single one of your bags, it won't matter which side you end up putting it on. So I've just got a bubble here that I refuse to let actually stay. And always have a clear table where you're sewing. Especially doing a curve. If you've got stuff on the table over here, you'll be more concentrating on that if you knock it off. And it also may impair your stitching. So try and have a clear space. And we're going to back stitch. Okie dokie. So I'm going to take my flap and I'm going to put the right sides together. So I'm going to put it in this way. And I'm going to just clip it to the back wall of the bag, which is the opposite side of the turn lock, like this. Because this flap is smaller than the bag, it doesn't go all the way down, you don't need to roll it at all. So I also probably want to cut off some of this excess on my seam allowance again. Ugh, see, here's the real test. It's cutting all the vinyl. But again, we want to cut this down so that the bag's going to sit super smooth on the inside. And because I'm using double-sided iron-on foam, I'm actually going to be able to, at the end of the video, go to the sewing machine and iron the inside of the bag. So I'm going to do that on camera so that you guys can see. I do it in a couple of my videos. I actually iron all of my bags when I finish. I just don't necessarily show it in all my videos. But I might in this one. Why not? Unless hubby starts hammering, and then maybe I won't. Right, so we're at another thick bit. I'm like, why are these scissors not going? They will go. If you don't want to wreck your scissors, which I should probably not do since they're brand new, you can just use your normal scissors to cut out those bits. So like here, I can just come in and do that. And it's the same thing. It's just the zigzag gives more of a movement. Oops. See, it doesn't like thickness. They're not really designed to be doing this, to be fair. All that vinyl and layers. But they'll do it, so it's fine. They just won't do it for as long as if they weren't. Alrighty, so now we're going to take our interior pocket and I'm going to put my zipper pocket up against the flap we just clipped in. So I'm going to put that in, and the first thing I'm going to do is trim off those tails because they're in my way. The second thing I'm going to do is I always line up the gusset seams first. I do the short ends first because they're quicker to be done. So I'm going to stick probably just 2 clips on there. 1 and 2. And then we're going to come to the opposite end and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm also thinking today we might use my cylinder arm machine to top stitch just because I can. In a real world situation where I'm not on video, I would actually switch to the cylinder arm to top stitch. So I'm going to do that today. You can do it on this machine. I do it in like so many of my videos. But if you've got a cylinder arm machine and it's just sitting there and not necessarily being used as much as it should, it's probably a good thing to watch. So I'm going to stitch it here, then we're going to turn it through, then we'll go to the other machine. Because why not, really? I should video it more. I've just got to find a good angle for that particular machine, that's all. So we're stitching around. I'm always stopping with my needle down and then I'm pulling the bag around because it's like sewing a giant circle. Needle down, readjust. Obviously pull your clips off as you go and don't sew faster than you can pull clips off. Now before I turn this through, I'm going to take some normal scissors and I'm going to cut V's into all of the seam joins like this to cut out that bulk. This is especially useful if you're on a domestic. If you cut out that bulk, it's going to be easier to top stitch when we turn it through. Now, because I'm using my cylinder arm, I probably don't need to do this, but I'm teaching, so I'm going to. Just cut that out. And so what I've done is I've removed the bulk. So when we turn that through, there's not going to be a crazy amount of bulky seam to then sew over again. Now, if you want to, you can grab your zigzag scissors again and just trim this down. But those corners, definitely knife edge scissors. This is like a lot of layers I'm cutting right now. So I know they look like they're struggling, but there's a lot. There's the back piece and its interfacing, the flap, both sides and its interfacing, and then a lining piece as well. So they're doing all right. Okay, so hand into the bottom of your bag. And then the first thing I like to grab is the flap and pull it up. I find it easier if the flap's up. I don't know why. Then I'm going to come in and grab a curve. It's not really a corner. And then all I do is I kind of just pull that corner till I can see it. And then I want to use my thumbs and push the bag into the lining so the lining has completely covered it. If I get to this point, I know from here it's going to be easy. Now, the bigger the hole you leave, the easier it is to turn, but you also do need to remember that you do still need to stitch that up. So you don't want to leave it too big because then it can get tricky. Especially, like, you don't want to leave it, you don't want to have to sew it up in a curve. That would suck. So, I'm just going to smooth all of this out. I'm actually making a fist because this knuckle and this knuckle are getting both sides. To smooth that out, this will still need a Tory squish at the end. So now I'm going to put my hand into the zipper pocket and grab the two open edges and then pull them through like this and stitch it shut. And then we're going to trim down this seam as well. So I'm going to start back a little bit and then back stitch. Now, if you need to, definitely put some clips in it, but this is sitting lovely. Surprisingly lovely, actually. So you want to back stitch at both ends. And then again with our zigzag scissors. Would you believe my other Fiskars scissors used to be this colour? They're not anymore, they're kind of faded. Trim off this curve. And then the flat. Again, that was a thick bit in the center. All right. So now when I push this back into the bag, it should all sit pretty smoothly. And you can check it. Obviously still need to top stitch. But if you check that, it is pretty flat in there. So now we're just going to, now that I can see that I haven't got any holes anywhere, everything's stitched shut, we're going to pull out that zipper pocket and I just use my fingers on the two seams on the edge and fold it over and then pull it tight and it folds it all for me. And then I'm going to start at one end and I'm going to back stitch and then stitch the pocket shut. Now you want to try and get as close to the edge as you can without falling off the edge and not stitching it closed. Also, if you've got a tag that you like to put in your bags, that's a nice little place to put it. And then I'm just going to poke the corners back into the zipper pocket and zip that shut. So it's not sitting lovely yet because I haven't done the Tory squish everywhere, but I'm going to get to that in a minute. First off, what I want to do is I want to fold this over and work out where the turn lock's going to sit. And then we'll go to the other machine and top stitch. But for right now, you're going to need the other half, your screwdriver, your craft knife, and some more of your fray stopper glue. Right, so we're going to fold it over and see where it wants to sit. Keeping in mind that you don't want to pull it too tight because you still want your edges to be edges. So like that there. So that's where I want it. So I can even take a Chaco pen and mark where the twist lock is sitting. Right, so I've literally just coloured it in like that. So that's where I need to cut this out. Seems simple enough. So we're going to take our craft knife and I'm going to cut one edge. Now again, this is a brand new blade, so this should go really, really smoothly. I say should because nothing ever does. And then I'm just going to slowly cut out the rectangle. Now making sure I'm going through all the layers like so. Now I'm going to unscrew it, and I didn't want to unscrew it till now because you don't want to lose your screws. That's obviously bad. I mean, I could still lose them now, but at least, you know, I'm up to the part where I can go look for them. Okay, so then we're going to take the outside and we're going to make sure that it fits, because if it doesn't fit, you need to cut some more. I've got some stray threads that I think are preventing me from fitting. So we're going to try it again. You can get cut dies for stuff like this, which are pretty cool. All right, I need my box to just be a little bit wider. So I'm just going to, in fact, I might switch to scissors for this now. Now that I've got the box, I can just adjust it with scissors. So I'm just going to cut like another 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch, or just a really little amount, because you don't want to overcut. That's a whole new problem. And then we flip it over and make sure that it fits. So it fits now. So now I want to take some fray stopper glue and put that all over everywhere. You just kind of want to smother it a little bit. So we don't want it to fray and carry on. In fact, I could probably take off that little bit there. That was mainly foam that I just cut off then. So then we just push the turn lock through the gap. We're going to take our back piece and sit it on. Put the screw in the hole and just screw it up. Seems simple enough. Right. So then I just want to make sure all of this part is also out of my way. And then we're going to do the same to the other side. You just want to make sure that any excess fabric is not hanging through the hole, because it's going to look messy. So I'm just using my screwdriver to kind of push it all down. Like this. I'm just scoring it into all of the seams so it's not hanging out. And then I'm going to take my other screw, and I missed entirely. And this one's not magnetic. So you're just going to put the screw in the hole and screw it up. Now, the more you do these, the quicker you get. I haven't done one of these in, a few years now. But I'm going to start doing them more because I got them in for my shop / for me. My shop basically has what I want when I've decided I need it. And I just buy extra in case you guys want some. Alright. So then that goes over there and twist locks shut. Super cute. I like that. Okay. Over to our other machine and let's do some top stitching. So this is my cylinder arm machine. I actually moved this out of the bay. I've ordered a new plate that hasn't got all these parts. So these parts are for binding, so this will automatically stitch on binding. But I always just move that out of the way. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't really care. So, because it's a cylinder arm, I can just get this bag in here, right? So I'm going to start at this edge, and I'm going to start by going over the flap. So, I'm going to put my needle down, I'm going to stitch, then I'm going to back stitch, and then I'm just going to hold my finger underneath, making sure that I'm not anywhere near anything, and I can just stitch around. Now you can get a similar result on a domestic machine by putting it up on like some books or a block to make it taller. But you just go around slowly but surely. You want to always try and stop with your needle down and then readjust. I'm going to flip that down so it's out of my way. And that was definitely quick and fun. So I've got a bunch of bobbins pre-wound with colours that I use the most. So like black, red, pink, cream. So I'm just going to chop them off while I get to the edge. And then we're going to get back to the start and we're going to backstitch. And that's it. Because it's a cylinder arm, it's just, I think it's quicker. It might not be. I like the result. So, that's now top stitched. But yeah, so I do use this machine a lot off camera. But on camera, I try and show you that you can make a bag with just one machine. But today, I just thought you might want to watch this one in action. So, when I'm finished using it, I put that on because it's also a bit of a dust cover. And I can take my thing off. So now I just need to go and do the Tory squish. So that's when you roll the seam and then violently shake it in opposite directions. And yes, I use the word violently. Because what it's doing is we're trying to crease it. So the rougher you are with it, the quicker you'll get the crease. If you just do this, this isn't going to do much. But if you do that, you get your crease much quicker. So I need to do that all the way around the edge. And then I'm going to come and we're going to go to the iron and use my mini iron to iron the inside nice and flat. My iron's all heated up. So the first thing I want to do is just put my hands in and smooth it all down by hand first. And then I'm just going to take this, and it's like you're putting interfacing on. You're just going to hold it for like 5 to 10 seconds, depending on how thick your fabric is and how hot your iron gets. And you're just going to start from the top and work your way down. So we're always pushing towards the bottom. You also want to get your zipper out of the way. A hot zipper will burn you. Now, if you've got your double-sided foam on the side pieces, you're going to want to flick it up like this and then iron it from the top down. And then I'm going to... So I'll just show you what we've got so far. So see how that side... See the difference? This side's still wrinkly and this side's like perfectly smooth and sitting flat. That's because I've now attached it to the extra bag foam. Now this side won't attach because there's no bag foam here, but that's no reason not to iron it. This side is a little bit harder because of the twist lock, but it's not impossible, so we are still going to do it. So there you go. And I've started the Tory squish, so you can already see it is sitting flatter. It's also trying to lean backwards because of the weight of the flap. So if we shut that, I still need some more Tory squishing, but you get the idea. So let's go put our handle on. I'm going to shut this. Hold on. I'm going to shut that. We'll go... Oh, really? There we go. All right, so I'm going to shut that. I'm going to go back to the machine and we're going to stick our handle on and then we're all finished. All right, so I've got our strap. So I'm going to go up and under the D-ring and then we're going to bring it up and onto itself like this. And I'm going to do the zigzag that I like doing. I'm going to do a nice big one today just for something different. I am going to move Scully out the way. So you just need to move the bag around with you so that it doesn't, you know, get in the way while we're stitching. So needle down to pivot in all the directions. No, not that way. So then we can just bring it out this way. There we go. And then up like that and back stitch. So that's now nice and attached. It's decorative because of the zigzag, and because I've done a bigger zigzag, it's just, I don't know, gives it a slightly different look. So then we're going to bring it up and around and make sure it's not twisted, and then again I'm going to go up and under. Now if you've got those fancy strap ends, you want to do this the opposite way so that you can see them. Otherwise, there's no point. So again, I always like to start at the end where the metal hardware is, because that way it's making sure that you won't stitch onto it or past it. So then we swing the bag around. I know you can't see, but we're going diagonally to the corner, needle down, pivot across the bottom. And then up like that and backstitch. And then the bag's done. You are finished. Now you could have also put like an adjustable strap on that if you wanted to. But yeah, just make sure you do a really good Tory squish along here. Another thing you can do is if you've got, like if your hubby's got work clamps, put some fabric inside them so they don't damage it, but you can actually clamp it to get a good crease. So you probably just clamp it for like half an hour and then move them along, although that will potentially take you all day to do. But if you don't have the strength to do this, then that's a good alternative, is clamps or quick grip clamps. Right, so we're going to do that all the way around and then your bag's all finished. So thanks for watching, guys, and until next time. All right, bye-bye.